Big and son. Big and. Big.
Keeper?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Oh. Oh, big and big. Come here. Oh God, hang on.
Oh God.
Hang on.
Get it. I got it.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Hey, Lost River Lure spinner bait.
Oh, what you thinking?
Look at the gut on that fish.
Oh my God. Wait, can I hold it?
Yeah, but don't drop it.
That is giant.
Hey.
I gotta get my muscles.
What's going on, y'all? Welcome back. We appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to click on our video and see what we got going on here at So In Outdoors. If you are a subscriber, thank you, much appreciated. And if you're not, and this is your first time here, hey, if you like what you see at the end of the video here, take the time to hit the subscribe button, turn those notifications on. It is much, much appreciated, and we appreciate your support in growing the channel. So from the video you just saw, that was a little older clip a couple years ago. And I caught some fish early spring, kind of late winter, honestly. Hadn't really got into spring just yet, but real close. Water temperatures, low 50s to mid 50s. And at that point in time, there is a technique that is completely overlooked, that really nobody does anymore. Very few people do it. And that is kind of waking a bait just under the surface. And I'll just get straight to it. That is waking a spinnerbait. Now, this is a very deadly cold water technique that you can use in late fall, early winter. It kind of dies off, of course, in the heart of winter, but as the water starts to warm again, it is a fantastic late winter, early spring technique. And when you're going to want to use this technique is when we have a warming trend for 2 or 3 days. A lot of sun on the water that's kind of getting that water temperature to rise fairly quickly. When that happens, you will have fish that pull up super shallow into that warmer water. And of course, as they get in that warmer water and kind of acclimate to that a little bit, they also tend to feed a little better, get a little bit more aggressive. And a spinnerbait with a big blade on it, I typically go with a double willow setup. There's a few modifications I do to it I'll get into in just a minute. But what you want to do is fish it just under the surface, creating a wake. And the key to it is to fish it slow, even though you're fishing it high in the water column. It's just something about it that waking action gets some of those bigger females that pull up early to kind of sun themselves. It gets them to bite. And when they bite it, it is ferocious. Now, it will work in, the middle of winter occasionally, but it's very situational. It takes, a day or two of warmer weather, the water temperature to kind of rise. Typically, you need a little off-colored water to get that bite where the fish are really feeding on their lateral line and not so much on sight. That's when that wake and spinnerbait can work even in the colder months. But as the days get longer, which we're starting to see now, stay in daylight a little bit longer, as that happens, the water temperatures slowly start to climb. As we get closer and closer to spring, this will become a big player. Now, the couple things that I do to this bait to make this wake the way that I want to be able to slow crank this bait, keep it just under the surface, create that waking action, but not fish the bait too fast. So I've seen guys do this technique and they will throw it out there with just kind of a regular tandem setup or Indiana blades, Colorado blades, whatever, and they're burning it to keep it up high. It's not what you want to do. You want to get that action, but you want that bait moving slow and just lethargic and cumbersome through the water. And that's what will initiate those strikes in that colder water. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to upsize this back blade. Depending upon the water temperature, I may change this blade, fairly drastically. I could go from a 4 all the way, to a 5, and I've even thrown a 6. But typically a 4.5 to 5 is what I'm going to go with on the back. You can switch this up and go with a Colorado to get the vibration and fish it high. I typically stick with the willow leaf or a big Indiana blade, either way. But I want to do that to maximize my lift. So I will always typically go with a tandem setup. More blades, more lift. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to downsize my head. Traditionally, I'm going to fish a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait just as my go-to all around, chucking a spinnerbait around. 1/2 ounce is kind of my go-to. I'm going to downsize to a 3/8 and in some instances all the way down to a 1/4 with that big blade, because now these blades have less weight to lift, therefore making that bait easier to rise in the water. The next thing I'm going to do is a trailer. I want a trailer that doesn't have a ton of action, but I kind of want a bulkier plastic. So I go with a Yum Pulse Minnow on the back, which is just a small 3.5 inch swim bait. And what this does is creates drag, therefore creating buoyancy, which also gives you lift in the water. So I can literally, just by changing the blades on this spinnerbait, downsizing the weight, adding the trailer, I can just slow crank this spinnerbait back to the boat, and it's moving at a fairly slow pace, but it's still creating that boil on top of the water that will get you that reaction strike whenever you fish it past one of those big females that have pulled up to sun themselves and kind of warm up as the water's warming. So the key areas to fish this is going to be very close to the winter pattern areas that we've already established in previous videos. They're not going to deviate far from that. What you may find is they will pull up on those flats that are adjacent to the river channel or adjacent to a deeper point, especially if that is leading into a spawning pocket or spawning area. But most of the time, they're not going to deviate far from that deeper water because we still have lots of cold fronts coming in and out of this, systems moving in and out that change those water temperatures on the daily. So they're not going to deviate too far from their comfort zone until things really start to get stable. So shallow areas, little shelves, little flat areas that are close to that deeper water are where you're going to want to focus on waking a spinnerbait. Now you can do the same thing with a bladed jig. You want to basically do the same exact modification. Bigger blade, bigger plastic, lighter head creates the lift without having to burn that bait back to the boat to create that wake or that boil. But you can do the same thing with a bladed jig. I tend to have more success with the spinnerbait in that colder water when I'm fishing it super slow and waking it. But it's a technique that you never see anybody do anymore. It's great around isolated wood. It's great around boat docks. In the video you saw earlier, I was fishing on a spawning flat on some isolated wood targets that were just kind of off by themselves. But when you get a fish that's in the right mood, they will come unglued on it. Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you want to know more about the spinnerbaits, check out Lost River Lures. That's Lost River Lures on Facebook. You can also find them on TikTok to place any orders. Quality spinnerbaits, premium components, 100% made in the USA. Great people to work with. And do not forget the promo code SIO10. That's Southern Indiana Outdoors, SIO10, to get you a cool 10% off of all of their products. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Get out there and put you a few in the boat. We got to get the boat out last week. We'll have some of that footage coming your way soon.